Hey everybody, so I'm just doing a little bit of a work in progress video today, also just talking about what's inspired me a little bit with painting my Hearth Guard and Warlord for the Anglo Danes. That being the movie Excalibur. I wanted to talk a little bit about that. Early 80s, I believe 1981 movie. And then in the end, I'm just going to do a little update commentary on how the club's going that I was talking about and how we're doing a Musket Tomahawks demo this weekend. And so yeah, you know, I'm trying to work on this SAGA warband so I can be playing this fairly soon with the local club. And I heard some folks talking, and I don't remember where, it was either online or even one of my friends locally saying, oh, you know, these guys are going to be primarily chainmail, and so you know how that goes. It's not going to be a whole lot of work to put in there, just slapping metallic paints on, and there you go. And I didn't disagree with that, because really, sometimes when you have a monotone look on a model, let's say you have a model that's completely in plate armor, you could go non-metallic and make it a work of art, you know. But if you're going with metallic, sometimes it's just a matter of putting on your metallics and your washes, touching it up, and there you go, you got it. And I wanted to get excited about these guys, and I wasn't too excited about that. And so I really thought hard about how I'm going to do the chainmail in a way that makes me excited to paint these and that I'm going to be happy with in the end. So let's cut from there. We'll cut back to that. But basically I'm in this sort of sword and shield mindset because I'm getting into SAGA and I'm painting SAGA. And even though Excalibur, which is based on the Arthurian legends, tales, is not at all Dark Ages or early medieval. You know, I mean, as I understand it, it's based more in the 1600s, is what I've read. But it's definitely a later period. My mind sort of went to that movie just when I was musing over things, and Excalibur was really one of those pivotal movies from my youth. Now, there are a lot of movies that don't translate well over time. And some of them actually have certain parts that don't translate well over time. You know, one that I can think of offhand that I absolutely love and think is a classic, but I think many parts don't translate well over time, is Highlander. If you know the scene of the Kurgan basically in the tower, like hitting his sword against the rocks and having these big foam rocks fall down the stairs, that really, when I had a really long period of time of not watching the movie and I went back and saw that, I viewed it completely differently than I did when it came out and I was a kid. But having said that, there's so many parts of the movie that are great, and it's such a classic that I think it's an amazing movie. Now, in the same way, the movie Excalibur is an excellent movie in my opinion. I think in some ways it translates over time better than Highlander, in the way that special effects are used and things, but it does have its moments. You know, it has a very quirky Merlin that is sometimes kind of funny and a little difficult to listen to at times, but the armor and the knights and the story and the music, when I was a kid and I saw that, there weren't many movies that achieved that level of epicness and just pure, like, I don't know, just pure high adventure. I just loved it. And to this day, you know, the actual suits of armor and the props and what they used was just amazing to this day, in my opinion. Now, on that note, with the suits of armor, there's two distinct styles of exterior on the armors in those movies. Now, there's also different styles to the actual armor themselves, and I'm not an expert on any of this, so folks chime in and correct me where I'm wrong when I make statements. But basically, you have a very shiny mirror finish type armor that's used in the movie, and you also have a very contrasting dark armor that's in that movie. I like both of them. I mean, both of them were great, and you could analyze the movie quite a bit. Not to go off on a tangent, but when I was just in college, I took a world history class, and one of the projects was to compare a movie to a written work of art. And, you know, I wrote a horrible paper. I think some of the stuff I said was cool at the time, but I'm sure it was written really badly. But I compared the Morte Arthur, the written work, and read that and compared that to Excalibur. That's how much I like this movie. I think that to some degree there was a choice of armor depending on where a character was in the movie or a side, and oftentimes the dark armor was associated with either a bad group or a group that was maybe not where it needed to be in its morals or something, as much as it was later. People could argue with that and disagree with me, but Arthur actually wore both sets of armor in different times in the movie. But the dark armor in the movie, I just really thought, I've always thought was cool, because it was very raw looking. Like, you had this shiny mirror armor, but then you had this dark black armor. And from what I've read, it may have been oiled armor, like, because as I understand it, and I was looking into this recently for the purposes of this project in front of you, late Roman period and beyond, there were times when they would oil their armor to prevent rust, and it would create a dark finish. Now, that may have been the case, or maybe it was the kind of iron or material that it was that they were trying to show that made the armor dark. Somebody can comment. I'd be interested in your thoughts on it. But either or, I'm not looking to be historically perfectly accurate. Like, you may say the Anglo Danes or the Vikings never did that, and that's fine. But I really want the look of these to be something I'm going to be happy with, and I got inspired to try to somewhat emulate that with my Anglo Danes. Now, right off the bat, these guys are not in medieval plate mail. They're just in chain mail. And so, but if you look in the movie, and I'm going to be showing, I've already shown some pictures, and I'll show one right here, where it shows Arthur in his plate mail, but he's got his chain mail sort of head covering on. And it's still like a dark chain mail. And that's kind of what I wanted to simulate. Now, I'm really happy with what I achieved. Now, the helmet and the axe are quite different, but I got this sort of darker look. Now, there may be metallics that come right out of the bottle that look this dark and still maintain a bit of shine, but actually have like a black look to them. I'm not aware of it. I have a lot of metallics. I own a lot of metallics of different types, and I've actually sought to get really dark metallics at times. And like one of them that I use for the helmet here, this helmet, which you can see is shinier, and the axe blade is oily steel, and I use this on the shoulder pads within my my Eldar avatar as well. And I love this paint. It's like a dark metallic, but it was still too shiny for what I wanted. I'm actually using it as a contrast, as a brighter contrast for these guys. And so what I ended up doing is I mixed black, Abaddon Black by GW 1-to-1 with Leadbelcher by GW. Now, in all fairness, I typically don't use droppers to try to get to that level of precision when I paint. I do it by eye, and so I probably have a little bit more black than the 1-to-1 because I use my brush, and I just sort of stick my brush in. I try to get the same amount of paint, a lob of paint on my brush tip or head, and then I'll put them both down, add a little bit of my water to thin it out, and honestly, I probably have a little bit more black, but I really love that. I didn't want something like really shiny, and that look is great, but I just personally didn't want that for this. I didn't want something really shiny then with like a wash to create it in the recesses. Like, I am happy with this without anything other than the actual paint mixed to those proportions. I wouldn't even need a wash on this, and I love that gritty look, but still with the shine that it creates. I'll use the word, but I think in some ways it creates just a realism that I was looking for with that sort of look that I just really quite like. So quite happy with that. I'm even done base painting these guys, as you can see. I'm painting them a little bit different than I did the warriors. Now, there are a number of reasons for that. I mean, these guys are a lot more uniform and regular, let's say, than those warriors were in their outfits. I have a 4-unit of Hearth Guard that actually are not with Dane axes, so I actually gave 2 of them spears, and I gave 2 of them swords, And so in the game Saga, what that means is that they're essentially regular Hearth Guard. They get the armor bonus and the attack bonus of a regular Hearth Guard. Whereas the folks that have the Dane axes, which a number of factions can use Dane axes, but they're very characteristic of the Anglo Dane unit. Well, obviously all four of them have the Dane axes, and so I didn't actually like give these guys undergarments that were all the same, like, you know, red for the Dane axes and brown for the others. I actually mixed that up. So, and then the Warlord, I started painting too, and I given him just some yellow, like, for that. But yeah, you know, I think happy so far with the way these guys are going, and like I was saying, the warriors all look very different, and they were, as I understand it, for the warriors for the Anglo Danes likely would have been Saxon landowners, you know, not levies or sort of like poorer folk, but a little bit more wealthy, but probably Saxons, many of them, because the Danes were essentially folks that came in and acquired this land and had people that they you know, were in control of, but they weren't Danes necessarily in many cases. And so yeah, so I kind of painted the warriors up just a little bit differently. They all looked a little bit different, but these guys are meant to have a little bit more of a uniformed look. They do have that. I mean, they have their chainmail. They all have the same helmets. They all appear to be wearing the same clothing. And so that kind of works for me. So yeah, I'll be working on this and finishing these guys up. And yeah, looking forward to it. I just thought this was nothing like amazing like with my find on the chainmail, but I really am quite happy with the look and with the paints I have, and I probably, looking up there, probably have 15 different metallics. I don't think right out of the bottle I could achieve this with any one of them. Yeah, oh, and just for those of you that I just brought this out, for those of you that question just how much of an Excalibur fan I am, this is what I watched it on recently. I have an old VHS tape. You know, that's probably this is probably 25 years old. I don't know, but I'm just throwing that number out there. I'm guessing that's probably what it is. But this is what I watched it on recently. I need to move up and be a real fan and get it on Blu-ray. But yeah, so